Every day, there seems to be a new fire somewhere in California. San Mateo County fire departments have responded by deploying dozens of their own to help combat these raging fires. October is Fire Prevention Month, and we have with us today Central County Fire Department Chief John Kammeyer to discuss this year's terrifying fire season and to give us useful tips on how to protect ourselves and our property from a fire. This seems to be the worst fire season that we've seen ever. Is that true?
We're definitely seeing a worse period right now. The last 3 years, we've seen 6 of the worst fires we've seen in the history of California.
Wow.
And what we're seeing right now in terms of the science behind all of that is we don't see that getting better. And so we're certainly seeing significantly more damage over time.
And why is that?
Well, I think if you think back about 4 years when we were in a significant drought, it takes years to get into a drought condition like that, and it takes us years to get out of that condition. And so even though the last few years we've seen lots of rain, we were seeing reduced snowpack, which speeds up the time that the snow melts off, and we have less snowpack later in the season. So those are little small details, but it adds up to when you get into fire season that the vegetation dries out faster. We're seeing hotter, more sustained heat during the summer. And so those conditions really dry things out, and the decrease in humidity increases the danger as well.
Yeah, a lot of public awareness too. I mean, just reminding people about what not to do during fire seasons, particularly in California because of our drought situations. I mean, it sounds like, are you guys doing a lot of public outreach that way as well?
Absolutely. Back in January, we had a community meeting where we invited members of all 3 of our communities to come and hear about what our experiences were, because we've certainly responded to most of the big fires in California, but also what we're doing about it locally. And really what it amounts to is that the community prepares itself, and we can put resources to fires, but the best fire is the one that never starts.
Of course.
And so preventative efforts are really where we try to focus our energy in terms of public education. And so that's what I would advise the community, is to take a look around for yourself and see what can be done. If you need our help, we are always there. We are a phone call away, whether it's an emergency of 911 or whether it's our business line. It's 650-558-7600. If you just have a simple question what you can do in your home, we can always help.
So local firefighters, particularly, of course, that you're overseeing, have been deployed to help out in these other fires. How many have been deployed, and does this also affect our service at home and the firefighters?
Right, great question. So this year, the Carr Fire, which in Redding was significant devastation, lives lost, one of the largest fires we've ever seen. We sent 2 fire engines. Each of those fire engines had 4 personnel. We did a relief crew because they were there past 2 weeks. So we had a total of about 12 people that were responded to that fire. And so the short answer of, does it impact us here at home? And the answer is no, because we send crews out. We backfill those crews. So there's always somebody here in every firehouse 24/7. There's a process called the Master Mutual Aid Program for California, where all local agencies are part of that response when they get asked by the state to go to these fires. And so there's systems in place to make sure at home we're covered, and that we can also help our neighbors depending how far they are in California. And lastly, to address the question in terms of what are the impact to our firefighters, firefighting is inherently dangerous. We've seen the worst line of duty deaths this season than we have in as far back as I can remember. There's been at least 6 that I can think of. And so it's an inherently dangerous profession, and when you put in extreme conditions like we've seen, it is dangerous. And so, and that's just the inherent hazard, but there are physical, stresses, there's mental stresses, and you're dealing with people losing their homes, and you're trying to help them find scraps of their property or something that's special to them. When a home is lost, there's a lot of emotional distress as well. So we had to try to take care of our firefighters in all aspects of wellness.
What can San Mateo residents, local residents, do to maybe protect themselves from starting a wildfire? It takes just a little bit of a fire and a breeze to really turn it into something massive. So what can we do locally to prevent that just in our neighborhoods?
Well, I think there's a couple things to consider, especially when we're talking about wildfires. We have open space areas, we have canyons, we have area that reaches into the watershed. So if you have a home or an area that's exposed to what we call wildland-urban interface, which is where you have a home that's situated near an outside area with grass and trees, make sure that you are what we call defensible space. Clear an area as far out as you can, up to about 100 feet, and that's what we recommend. Now, that may not be feasible for some folks, but the further you can clear away some of those, what we call flashy fuels, so dry grasses, is really key. As much as we are seeing devastation and fires, I don't want to send alarm bells to our citizens either, because we have a very safe community. We have a low historical incidence of these fires, but we also want to be prepared. So defensible space is a key. Dead trees, dead branches, making sure that your roofs are clear of leaves, any debris that can kind of create a fire. Those are some of the key things. And you can always go on our website. We have a whole section on fire prevention, regardless of what you're looking for prevention information at www.ccfd.org.
And we'll put that on the screen for our viewers. Mentioning calling and getting into contact with you, it leads me to another question. Do you guys offer any resources to reach out to the community? If I call, can you come out and check if I have a safe roof, or if I have any areas, or if that 100-foot is not wide enough? Is that something that you do?
Absolutely. So we are very big in advocacy for homeowners. And so anybody that calls our number, again, it's 650-558-7600, and ask for our prevention department, we can send somebody out to assist you, to let you know if it's safe, give you any tips, regardless of what it is. It could be inside your home, it could be outside your home, it could be anything. We're big into public education because we really think safety starts with the individuals in the community, and we're here to help with that.
Absolutely. What about fire started inside the home? We're talking about outside. Any tips for residents?
Yeah, so primarily that's what we see more of locally, are fires that tend to start indoors. And there's a couple things you can do. One is a fire extinguisher, absolutely. So have one in the kitchen, but don't put it right by the stove, because that's a large source of where fires start in the home. Have it a little ways away from the stove. Absolutely have smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, and you can buy detectors that have both the carbon monoxide and the smoke detector component built into it. Other things you can do is educate your family. Have a plan, whether it's a fire, whether it's an earthquake. People need to know where to go in an emergency and how to communicate with the rest of their family. So have a communication plan, have an exit drill plan for your home. If there's a fire in the middle of the night, how are you going to get out? If you live upstairs, if you live downstairs. So everybody's really clear on that, because the first thing you're going to want to know when you get outside of that fire is where the rest of your family is. So that communication is big. So those are a couple elements that are really important. And we do a lot of outreach, especially at the grade school age, because that's really where it starts and where we know we have a vulnerable population.
Yeah, and I think that's imperative, because nobody thinks that it's ever going to happen to them until, unfortunately, it may.
And we say it all the time.
Talk to me about smoke detectors. And you brought up carbon monoxide detectors as well. Anything that we should know particularly about those items?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can't stress the importance of smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors, and because now, the past 5 to 10 years, we've seen more carbon monoxide detectors being implemented. They're required, and anybody that has if you live in a rental residence, was apartment or a home, they're required.
It's a code requirement.
It's a code requirement, so we absolutely require those. And I can't tell you how many times we've been, because carbon monoxide is very unique in that you can't smell it, you can't taste it, you don't know it's a hazard until sometimes it's too late. And so smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors in the home is absolutely vital. Having those in your living spaces, in the hallways, are really critical. And change your batteries whenever you change your clock. There's a saying we like to do: change your clock, change your batteries. That way you always know it's a fresh battery. And also make sure every 10 years that detector gets replaced. So there's a lifespan to the ability for that detector to do its job.
Do you recommend a detector for each level of the home?
Yes.
Or if you have a bigger home, how like what is the space, I guess, or square footage?
Yeah, so one on every level.
Okay.
So if you have a home that you have bedrooms, you would want one in the hallway that leads to the bedrooms. You have one to the area just outside the kitchen. Hard to have one in the kitchen because it's gonna, if you cook like I do and you tend to burn things. On the stove, you want to.
Come on, you're a firefighter. You guys are born to cook, right? You guys need to cook.
Some people are good cooks, some people are good dishwashers. I may be the latter. So, but we see that a lot. So just off the space of that, and again, have that fire extinguisher nearby. If you're cooking, have a lid. So if you have a grease that lights off, you don't throw water on grease. You want to put the top on it. But for smoke detectors, yeah, every level, outside all the sleeping spaces, outside the living spaces, and anywhere you might think. You can't have too many. They might start to annoy you if you have them in every single room.
Sure,
they're easy to go off.
Or even just like on the patio. We do a lot of
Sure.
barbecuing outdoors, and we always have one out on the patio. Or at Thanksgiving. I know Thanksgiving is unfortunately a popular
Yeah.
time for you guys because people don't think about that.
Yeah, I recently actually just put one in my own garage because you don't know, and a garage is just one of those places we don't think about. But if you think about, sometimes you have a water heater in there, a dryer, a washer, you have chemicals, you have lots of opportunity for mishaps to happen in there.
Absolutely.
So I actually put one in my garage just for that reason, because you never know.
Yeah, you hear a lot of chemicals that just all of a sudden combust and start fires. And so talking about fires inside the home, we've been finding this a lot with the North Bay fires, that a lot of people are underinsured.
Right.
I know that you're not an insurance specialist, but
Yeah.
you see a lot of this devastation firsthand. Are you finding that a lot of people are underinsured?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know if I'm the best expert on that.
Sure.
We're obviously well aware of that people that live in what we call very high fire hazard severity areas have trouble getting fire insurance. Now, fortunately in Millbrae, we don't have that area. That's a state identified area. We don't have those areas. We do have some in our other communities. But the one thing that we can't control what the insurance companies do, but what we can do is, and we like to look at it, is we're focused on prevention. Stop the fire. The best fire is the one that doesn't start again. And so that's where we focus that. The things that we can control, we can control our outreach and do as much outreach as we can to the community. So the struggles with the insurance are very real, and California has been devastated by these fires, and lives have been lost and devastated, and insurance doesn't pick up those pieces. I think that's important to remember. And so we're trying to put the energy where we think it's best applied, and that's in prevention.
Homeowners should check with their homeowners just to make sure.
Absolutely.
It's always worth, you don't realize it until you need it, and then you find out.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think all of us probably to some degree take that in stride, and we don't really think about it until it does happen. And so check in your policy, make sure it's covered. Maybe some things can be increased to get better protection. I'm not the expert for that, but
But I think a lot of Millbrae residents our community is finding that out due to our rec center was burned down recently, and insurance was not adequate enough. So I think that's really becoming to light as well, because a lot of measures have been made to ensure that rec center rebuild is going to be top notch.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and in talking with you before our interview, you were saying that you always knew you wanted to be a firefighter. Sure. And I think a lot of young kids, and maybe even some adults, like to do that.
Yeah.
How does somebody start? What if a young viewer out there wants to become a firefighter? What do they do? Well,
if you're an aspiring firefighter, I would highly encourage you to, if you're in high school or younger, get really good grades, study hard. There's nothing to replace that. But when you're in high school and you're thinking about graduating, kind of where I was, the community College of San Mateo is a great place to start. They have an excellent fire science program up there. When you get involved in that, a lot of times you become interns or cadets for fire departments, and you get occupational credit for school. We have that program, so if you're in that program, please call us. We're always looking for interns and to help them and kind of guide their careers. So that's a big part. And if you're an adult and you're happy with what you're doing, but you want to contribute, or you want to give back to your community, we have the community emergency response teams. And I'm very proud to say that Millbrae has a very dedicated CERT team.
Yeah, we do.
Led by Dino, who I know is a community favorite. He's a great guy and he runs a great program. We provide the training for that. We help sort of facilitate the drills and stuff following that. But if that's something that you're interested in, again, please call our office or go to our website. You can even come down to the City Hall and request information for that. That's a great way because in an emergency, let's just say the big earthquake that we always talk about, the fire department in a big earthquake is not going to be able to be everywhere at once, and we're going to rely on people like Dino and his
Sure.
team to come out and get into their own communities and make sure their own neighbors are safe and be able to provide some assistance. That's an excellent way, and I can't, again, say how proud I am of that program.
Does the CERT program, has that kind of taken over the volunteer firefighters? You hear of some communities that have volunteer
Sure.
firefighters, and does that kind of, is that what CERT now is?
In some aspects, because they get extensive training. So they get a lot of training in a lot of the dynamics that we deal with on a daily basis. And what we really stress to our CERT students is that you have to advocate for yourself and your neighborhoods first in an emergency, especially a large scale, whether it's a wildfire or an earthquake or floods. We're talking about all the big disasters, but that the community is going to be dependent on itself, and that the resilience of the community is going to be driven out of its own preparedness. And that's where these teams really kind of shine. And so I would call that sort of an offshoot of that, the volunteer firefighter, because you're giving back to your community, you're serving your community and providing for that resilience.
Now to close, I'd like to pose something to our viewers, and I think you'd be a perfect person to do this.
Sure.
Let's remind our viewers when they're out on the road, what's the proper way to respond to an emergency vehicle that is coming behind you or on the other side of the road?
I will try to make it really simple. Pull to the right for sirens and light.
There you go.
That's going to make you safe, it's going to make us safe, and it's going to make us get to that emergency much faster. So just pull to the right, slowly, let us pass, and then you can be on your way.
No matter what side you're on. Pull to the right if you see a light.
Right.
It's a good motto. We'll have to
Try to
remember
make
that.
it easy.
Well, thank you, Chief, for taking the time
Lisa,
with us
thank you.
today. And thank you to all the men and women in your department that tirelessly work to keep our homes and our loved ones safe from fires. I hope you found this information useful. We can all do things to keep our neighborhoods safe and free from a disaster. Thank you for watching Take Notice. I'm Lisa Charney. Have a safe day.